The starship hummed softly as Captain Kale Vance settled into the familiar rhythm of his routine inspection. The gleaming corridors of Orbitus 7 Space Station stretched before him, bustling with the diverse life forms that made these frontier outposts such fascinating places. His crisp Terran Alliance uniform commanded respect wherever he went, and the sentient beings who recognized it often gave him a wide berth. Kale had earned his reputation through years of disciplined service and unwavering dedication to the Alliance protocols. At 32, he was younger than most captains of his rank, but the hardened look in his steel-gray eyes spoke of experiences beyond his years. The scars on his left cheek, 3 thin white lines running parallel from temple to jaw, were remnants of a skirmish with scavenger pirates in the Cygnus sector. "Captain, the trade negotiations are scheduled to begin in 3 hours," his communications officer informed him through his earpiece. "The Lyra delegation has requested a preliminary meeting." "Acknowledged," Kale replied tersely. He'd dealt with the Lyrans before, a peaceful species from the planet Xylos, known for their diplomatic nature and exceptional artistic abilities. Their silvery hair and multichromatic eyes made them easily recognizable among the station's diverse population. As he navigated toward the central marketplace, a commotion caught his attention. Raised voices echoed from a merchant stall, and the crowd parted as 2 burly draconian traders advanced menacingly toward a small figure. "I didn't take anything. Please, I was just looking." The voice was young, feminine, with a distinctive melodic quality of Lyran speech. Kale's hand instinctively moved to his pulse pistol as he assessed the situation. The Draconians, reptilian humanoids with notorious tempers, were cornering a Lyran girl against a display of crystalline artifacts. "You Lyrans think you can touch whatever you want with those glowing fingers of yours," one of the Draconians snarled, his scaled face contorted with anger. "Those crystals change color permanently when your kind handles them." The girl, no more than 16 in Earth years, pressed herself against the wall. Her silvery hair shimmered with hints of blue under the market lights, and her eyes, a swirling mixture of violet and amber, were wide with fear. Yet there was something defiant in her posture. "I didn't touch them. I know the rules," she insisted, clutching a small datapad to her chest. Kale stepped forward smoothly, inserting himself between the Draconians and the girl. "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" The larger Draconian hissed in recognition of Kale's uniform. "Alliance business doesn't concern local trade disputes, Captain. Public safety on an Alliance station is very much my concern," Kale countered, his voice level but carrying an unmistakable edge of authority. "Especially when 2 adults are intimidating a child." "I'm not a child," the girl protested from behind him. "I'm 16 cycles." Without taking his eyes off the Draconians, Kale replied, "You're still a minor under Alliance law." "Now," he addressed the traders, "do you have proof of any wrongdoing?" The merchant who owned the stall intervened, a 4-armed Quarian with glistening blue skin. "The crystals haven't changed color, Captain. Perhaps a misunderstanding." After a tense moment, the Draconians backed down, murmuring threats that Kale knew were merely face-saving gestures. The crowd dispersed, and he turned to face the Lyran girl. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying the musical lilt typical of her species. "But I really could have handled it myself." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Well, maybe not today," she admitted with a small smile. "I'm Lyra. Actually, my full name is Lyranesial Ta'Veren, but everyone calls me Lyra." "Captain Vance," he replied formally, "you should be more careful in the market section. Not everyone here appreciates curiosity." Instead of being chastened, Lyra's eyes lit up. "You're with the Terran Alliance. Have you been to many planets? What's Earth like? Is it true humans have only one heart? How fast can your ships go?" Kale blinked, taken aback by the rapid-fire questions. Most species found his demeanor intimidating, but this girl showed no sign of being impressed by his rank or reputation. "I have duties to attend to," he said, trying to disengage from the conversation. To his dismay, Lyra fell into step beside him. "I'm heading to the Central Plaza too. My father is part of the Lyran Diplomatic Corps. He's always in meetings, so I explore the station. I've been studying human culture, she added proudly. Your species is fascinating, so adaptable and resilient despite your biological limitations. Despite himself, Kale felt a flicker of amusement. Our limitations haven't hindered our progress much. That's what makes humans so interesting. Lyra's eyes sparkled with genuine enthusiasm. You've achieved interstellar travel, even though you live barely a century. It's impressive. As they walked, Kale found himself answering her questions about Earth, about the Alliance, about his missions, sanitized versions, of course. There was something refreshing about her unabashed curiosity, so different from the calculated interactions he usually navigated. Have you ever been to the Cassiopeia Nebula? She asked. I've read that the radiation creates auroras that can be seen from ship viewports. Once, Kale acknowledged. On a patrol mission. I wish I could see it, Lyra sighed. Someday, I want to travel beyond Xylos and our neighbor systems. The universe is more dangerous than it is beautiful, Kale cautioned. Lyra's expression grew serious. That's why we need people like you, isn't it? To protect others. She studied his face with surprising intensity. Those scars, they're from fighting, aren't they? Kale stiffened. Few people dare to mention his scars directly. Yes. You must be very brave, she said simply, without the pity or discomfort most people displayed. They had reached the central plaza, a vast open area beneath the station's transparent dome, offering a spectacular view of the swirling purple atmosphere of the gas giant the station orbited. I should go, Kale said, checking the time on his wrist display. Will you be at the diplomatic reception tonight? Lyra asked eagerly. Briefly, he admitted, protocol requiring senior officers to make an appearance. Her face lit up. Then I'll see you there. Before Kale could respond, Lyra had already darted away, her silvery blue hair streaming behind her like a comet's tail. The diplomatic reception was as tedious as Kale had anticipated. Various species mingled in the grand hall, discussing trade agreements and border regulations with forced politeness. He maintained his position near the entrance, acknowledging dignitaries with curt nods while scanning the room for any security concerns. Captain Vance. Lyra's voice cut through the ambient conversation as she approached, wearing traditional Lyran formal attire, a flowing garment that seemed to capture and reflect light in mesmerizing patterns. I was hoping to find you. Kale nodded stiffly, aware of the amused glances from his junior officers nearby. I brought you something, she continued, offering a small, flat object. It's a data crystal with historical archives about Xylos. Since you answered all my questions about Earth, I thought you might be curious about my home. The gesture caught him off guard. That's thoughtful of you. Maybe you could tell me what you think of it. Her eyes held a hopeful expression. My father says we'll be at this station for another 7 rotations before returning to Xylos. One of Kale's officers, Lieutenant Dawson, approached with a barely concealed smirk. Captain, your young admirer seems quite persistent. Lyra's cheeks flushed with a silvery hue, the Lyran equivalent of a blush, but she lifted her chin defiantly. Lieutenant, Kale acknowledged coldly, silencing further comments with a look. The rest of the evening proceeded with diplomatic predictability, but Kale found his attention repeatedly drawn to Lyra. She moved through the gathering with surprising grace, engaging various dignitaries in conversation. There was an earnestness to her that seemed out of place among the political maneuvering. Over the next few days, Kale encountered Lyra frequently, too frequently to be coincidental. She would appear in the observation deck while he was reviewing reports, or in the officer's mess during his meal breaks. Each time, she came armed with new questions or observations, her enthusiasm undimmed by his reserved responses. Do you ever get lonely, traveling between the stars? She asked him once, as they stood watching ships depart through the station's massive docking bay windows. I have my duties, he replied. Lyra studied him thoughtfully. That's not an answer. On the 7th day, Kale's ship, the Intrepid, was prepared for departure. A border dispute in a neighboring system required alliance mediation, and his presence had been requested. As he supervised the final loading procedures in the cargo bay, a familiar voice called his name. Lyra stood at the security checkpoint, waving frantically to catch his attention. With a sigh, Kale approached her. "I heard you're leaving," she said, her usual exuberance subdued. "I wanted to say goodbye." "Safe journey back to Xylos," he replied formally. Lyra hesitated, then the words tumbled out in a rush. "I like you, Captain. A lot. More than just. I mean, I've never met anyone like you." Her multi-chromatic eyes locked with his, showing a courage that belied her age. "When my father's assignment is done, I could apply to the Alliance Academy. I could become an officer too, and then maybe—" "Lyra," Kale interrupted gently, discomfort and a strange fondness warring within him. "You're very young. Age is measured differently among species," she countered. "In Lyran development, you're still at a stage where everything seems possible," he said. "The universe will look very different in a few years." "My feelings won't change," she insisted with the absolute certainty of youth. Kale felt an unexpected twinge. In another life, in another time, perhaps he would have been touched by her declaration. There was something pure about her affection, untainted by the political calculations that colored most of his interactions. But he was who he was, a career officer with responsibilities and a past that had taught him the cost of attachments. "Come back when you're older," he said finally, a hint of gentleness breaking through his professional demeanor. He meant it partly as a kind dismissal, partly as a genuine acknowledgement of her potential. "Find your own path. If it still leads to the stars, who knows what might happen?" Hope and determination blazed in her eyes. "I will," she promised, with such conviction that Kale almost believed her. "I'll come back, and I'll be someone you can't dismiss so easily." With an impulsive movement, she pressed something into his hand, a small, intricate pendant crafted from a material he didn't recognize, inscribed with Lyran symbols. "For safe travels," she explained. "It's a navigator's blessing." Before he could respond, she turned and walked away, her back straight and her head high, silvery blue hair swaying with each determined step. Kale watched her go, the pendant warm in his palm. Then he pocketed it, pushed the encounter from his mind, and returned to his duties. The stars awaited, and a captain's responsibility never ended. 7 Earth years passed. The universe continued its relentless evolution. Borders shifted, alliances formed and fractured. New threats emerged from the darkness between stars. Through it all, the Terran Alliance maintained its precarious position as a mediating force, and Colonel Kalen Vance remained one of its most respected field commanders. The promotion had come after a particularly difficult mission in the Procyon sector, where his tactical decisions had saved not only his crew, but thousands of civilians on a threatened colony world. The additional rank brought greater responsibilities, a larger ship, the dreadnought Resolute, and more political complications. Kale stood on the bridge of his vessel, gazing at the swirling blues and purples of the planet Xylos on the main view screen. A world he hadn't visited in years, though the name occasionally triggered a fleeting memory of earnest, multicolored eyes and questions asked without guile. "Colonel, we're receiving the orbital approach coordinates from Xylos Control," his navigation officer reported. Kale nodded. "Proceed according to their vectors. Communications. Inform the Lyran High Council that we'll be ready for the emergency session within 2 hours of docking." The situation was grim. A ruthless organization known as the Void Cartel had been expanding its operations in this sector, trafficking in weapons, prohibited technology, and even sentient beings. Their latest provocation, an attack on a Lyran research outpost, had finally prompted the peaceful species to request Alliance intervention. As the Resolute established orbit around Xylos, Kale reviewed the intelligence briefings one final time. The Lyrans had appointed a special liaison to coordinate with Alliance forces, someone with expertise in both cultures, the report noted. "Colonel," his executive officer approached. "The Lyran liaison has requested permission to come aboard before we disembark. They're sending a shuttle now." "Granted," Kale replied. "Have them escorted to the conference room. I'll meet them there after we're secured in orbit." 20 minutes later, Kale strode toward the conference room, mentally preparing for the diplomatic dance that would precede any effective action against the cartel. The Lyrans were notoriously cautious about military operations in their territory, preferring negotiation to confrontation in almost all circumstances. The door slid open, and Kale stepped inside, expecting to see one of the silver-haired elders who typically represented Lyran authority. Instead, he found himself facing a young woman whose presence immediately commanded attention. She stood tall and poised by the viewport, dressed in a form-fitting Lyran diplomatic uniform that shimmered with subtle iridescence. Her hair, silver with striking blue undertones, was elegantly arranged, framing a face that was both familiar and startlingly transformed. When she turned toward him, her eyes, that distinctive swirl of violet and amber, widened slightly in recognition. "Colonel Vance," she said, her voice carrying the same musical quality he remembered, though deeper and more controlled. "It's been some time. I'm Lyra Ta'Veren, Special Envoy for Interspecies Security Cooperation." For perhaps the first time in his career, Kale found himself momentarily speechless. The eager girl with boundless questions had become a self-possessed woman whose bearing matched any diplomat he'd encountered. "Envoy Ta'Veren," he managed, regaining his composure as he stepped forward to offer the traditional Lyran greeting, a slight bow with open palms. "I wasn't aware we had met before." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. 7 years ago, Orbitus 7 Station. You intervened in a disagreement between me and some draconian traders. I remember, Kale admitted, studying her with new eyes. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the impulsive teenager, replaced by someone who carried herself with quiet confidence. Yet those eyes still held the same intelligence, the same intensity he remembered. "I believe you told me to come back when I was older," Lyra continued, a hint of challenge beneath her professional tone. "I hope 23 cycles is sufficient." Before Kale could respond, his tactical officer's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Colonel, we've detected unusual energy signatures near Xylos' southern continent. Possible cartel activity." "Display," Kale ordered, moving to the conference room's tactical screen. Lyra joined him without hesitation, her focus immediately shifting to the data streaming across the display. "Those readings match the signature from the research outpost attack," she confirmed. "But the pattern is different, more concentrated. They're preparing another strike," Kale concluded grimly, "targeting something specific." Lyra's fingers moved rapidly over the console, overlaying the energy readings with a map of the region. "The scientific archives," she said, her professional demeanor slipping to reveal genuine alarm. "It houses millennia of Lyran knowledge and dangerous research that was deemed too volatile for practical application." "Weapons research?" Kale asked sharply. "Among other things. My people generally abhor violence, but that doesn't mean we never explored its potential." Her expression was troubled. "If the cartel gains access to some of those theoretical designs, we need to move immediately," Kale decided. "I'll mobilize a strike team." "I'm coming with you," Lyra stated, not a request but a declaration. Kale's instinct was to refuse. This was a military operation, not a diplomatic mission, but something in her unwavering gaze stopped him. "What combat experience do you have, Envoy?" "I completed the full Alliance tactical training program as part of my interspecies security certification," she replied evenly. "And I have knowledge of the archive's layout and security systems that your team lacks." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Alliance tactical training? That's not standard for diplomatic personnel." "I pursued additional qualifications," she said simply. He studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "Gear up. We depart in 15 minutes." As the assault shuttle descended toward Xylos' surface, Kale observed Lyra from across the compartment. She wore standard Alliance combat armor over her diplomatic uniform, handling the equipment with practiced ease. When she caught him watching, she offered a small, confident smile that carried echoes of their first meeting. "The Archives facility has 3 primary entrance points," she briefed the team, displaying a holographic schematic. "Based on the energy signatures, the The cartel forces have breached the eastern entrance and are likely proceeding toward the restricted archives in the central chamber. "How many hostiles are we expecting?" asked Lieutenant Dawson, the same officer who had once smirked at Lyra's youthful attention toward Cale. "Cartel typically operates in cells of 8 to 12, Cale replied. "Heavily armed, minimal regard for civilian casualties. The facility should be largely empty at this hour," Lyra added. "But there are always some researchers present, and the automated security systems may not distinguish between intruders and rescuers once activated." The shuttle touched down in a concealed position 200 meters from the archive's western entrance. As the team disembarked, the elegant spires of the archive's complex rose before them, glowing softly against the twilight sky of Xylos. Even in the current crisis, Cale couldn't help but admire the graceful architecture so characteristic of Lyran design. "We'll split into 2 teams," he ordered. "Dawson, take Mercer and Wong through the south entrance. Envoy Taverin and I will enter from the west. Our priority is securing the restricted archives and neutralizing any cartel members we encounter." The operation proceeded with precision at first. Cale and Lyra navigated the western corridors of the archives, encountering no resistance. The silence was unnerving. The usual ambient music that filled Lyran public spaces was eerily absent. "Something's wrong," Lyra murmured, her hand steady on her pulse pistol. The auxiliary systems should have activated after a breach. They rounded a corner into a vast chamber filled with crystalline data storage units, each glowing with a soft inner light. At the far end, a figure lay crumpled on the floor. Lyra rushed forward, Cale covering her advance. The fallen Lyran wore the insignia of an archive security officer, a severe wound marring his silver-tinged skin. "Nareem," Lyra whispered, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" The officer's multi-chromatic eyes flickered open, recognition dawning as he saw Lyra. "Special Envoy." They knew the codes. "Disabled primary security. Seeking the Void Gate research." "Save your strength," Lyra urged, applying a medical patch from her kit to his wound. "How many?" 15, at least. Their leader, human. His eyes closed again as the medical patch took effect, inducing a healing stasis. Cale and Lyra exchanged grim looks. "A human leading the cartel cell?" Cale said quietly. "That complicates matters. Rogue Alliance personnel have joined the cartel before," Lyra replied, rising to her feet. "The Void Gate research is in the most restricted section. If they access it..." A distant explosion shook the building, cutting off her explanation. "Dawson, report," Cale commanded through his comm unit. Static answered him. Then Lieutenant Dawson's voice broke through, punctuated by weapons fire. "Heavy resistance at the south entrance, sir. At least 8 hostiles with advanced shielding. We're pinned down." "Hold position," Cale ordered. "We're proceeding to the central chamber." As they moved deeper into the archives, the elegant architecture gave way to more functional design. Security checkpoints appeared with increasing frequency, many showing signs of forced entry. "The Void Gate research," Cale prompted as they advanced cautiously. "What exactly are we preventing them from obtaining?" Lyra's expression was troubled. "Theoretical work on creating stable wormholes between distant points in space." The principles were sound, but the energy requirements made practical application impossible with current technology. She paused at a security door, entering a complex sequence on its control panel. Or so we thought. The recent advances in quantum singularity containment might have changed that equation. "Instantaneous transportation across vast distances," Cale murmured. "In the cartel's hands, they could move troops, weapons, contraband anywhere in known space without detection," Lyra finished. The research also detailed the catastrophic effects of an unstable void gate, essentially creating a localized black hole. The door slid open, revealing a short corridor leading to a massive circular chamber. At its center stood a pedestal holding a crystalline orb that pulsed with deep purple light. And surrounding it were 8 figures in the distinctive black armor of the Void Cartel, led by a tall human male with a shock of white hair and a face that Kale recognized with a jolt of anger. "Stellan Reed," he growled, "former Alliance commander, court-martialed for selling military secrets 3 years ago." The white-haired man turned, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Colonel Vance, your reputation for inconvenient timing remains intact." His gaze shifted to Lyra, and his smile widened. "And the brilliant special envoy Taverin. Your presence saves us the trouble of hunting you down later." "Step away from the research core, Reed," Kale demanded, his pulse pistol trained on the ex-commander. Reed chuckled. "Always so direct. Perhaps you'd like to know that your other team is currently negotiating with a dead man's switch explosive. One false move from any Alliance personnel, and your Lieutenant Dawson becomes a cautionary tale." Lyra stepped forward, her own weapon steady. "The Void Gate research isn't complete. The theoretical models never resolved the quantum instability issue. Whatever you're planning, it won't work." "That's where you're wrong, my dear," Reed replied. "Your models lacked a crucial element, one that the cartel discovered in the ruins of a civilization far older than any of your peoples." He gestured to the crystal orb. "With this data and that missing piece, we'll revolutionize interstellar travel. Under our terms, of course. And kill millions in the testing phase," Lyra countered. "The instabilities would create gravitational shockwaves capable of destroying entire planetary systems." While they spoke, Kale noticed Lyra subtly shifting position, placing herself at a specific angle to the pedestal. Her free hand made a small gesture he recognized from Alliance tactical sign language. "Distraction needed." "Your concern for collateral damage is touching," Reed was saying, "especially from a species that hides its most destructive research behind a facade of peaceful diplomacy." Kale caught Lyra's eye for the briefest moment, an understanding passing between them. Then, he launched into a tirade designed to focus all attention on himself. "Reed, your delusions of grandeur were pathetic when you wore an Alliance uniform, and they're pathetic now," he spat. "You weren't fit to command a garbage scow, let alone revolutionize interstellar travel." Rage flashed across Reed's face. "You arrogant!" In that moment of distraction, Lyra moved with astonishing speed. Her hand darted to her belt, extracting not a weapon but a small silver device that she hurled toward the crystal orb. It attached to the pedestal and immediately emitted a high-pitched tone. The crystal's purple glow flared brilliantly, then dimmed to almost nothing as a containment field shimmered into existence around it. "Quantum dampening field," Lyra announced calmly. "The research data is now inaccessible without the deactivation codes, which just transferred to Alliance secure servers." Reed's face contorted with fury. "Kill them both." Chaos erupted in the chamber. Kale dove behind a data terminal as energy bolts from cartel weapons sizzled through the air. Lyra rolled in the opposite direction, returning fire with remarkable precision. The firefight was intense but brief. Kale and Lyra worked with unexpected synchronicity, covering each other's movements and systematically neutralizing the cartel operatives. When Kale found himself pinned down by concentrated fire, Lyra created an opening for him by activating a local gravity fluctuation from a nearby control panel, a distinctly Lyran tactic that momentarily disoriented their attackers. Reed, seeing his forces falling, made a desperate lunge for the contained crystal orb. Lyra intercepted him, her combat training evident in the fluid efficiency of her movements. She deflected his first strike and countered with a precise blow that sent him staggering. But Reed was a former Alliance commander with years of combat experience. He recovered quickly, drawing a vibroblade that hummed with lethal energy. "You should have stayed a diplomat," he snarled, slashing at her with vicious precision. Lyra evaded the blade by millimeters, but the follow-up strike caught her across the arm, drawing a line of silvery blood. She faltered, and Reed pressed his advantage. Kale, finishing off the last of the other cartel members, turned to see Reed driving Lyra back toward the chamber wall, his vibroblade flashing in deadly arcs. Without hesitation, Kale charged across the room, intercepting Reed's next strike with his own combat knife. The clash of the two blades sent sparks cascading around them. Reed's face twisted into a sneer. Still fighting other people's battles, Vance? Some things never change. They fought with the brutal intensity of two highly trained killers, each seeking the single opening that would end the conflict. Reed's experience made him a formidable opponent, but Cale was driven by something beyond professional duty, a fierce protectiveness he hadn't felt in years. Lyra, recovering from the initial shock of her wound, didn't remain idle. As the two men fought, she accessed another control panel, her fingers dancing across the interface with practiced expertise. Reed managed to knock Cale's knife away and followed with a thrust that would have been fatal if Cale hadn't twisted at the last moment. Even so, the blade sliced through his armor at the shoulder, drawing blood. "Your legendary luck is running out, Colonel," Reed taunted, preparing for a final strike. Suddenly, the gravity in the chamber shifted dramatically. Reed, unprepared for the change, found himself staggering as his weight effectively tripled. Cale, who had glimpsed Lyra at the control panel, was braced for the shift. Taking advantage of Reed's momentary imbalance, Cale delivered a powerful strike that sent the vibroblade clattering across the floor. A follow-up blow knocked Reed to his knees, where the intensified gravity held him effectively immobilized. "Stellar gravitational simulation," Lyra explained, approaching with her pulse pistol trained on Reed. A security feature designed to prevent unauthorized removal of sensitive materials. Reed glared at them both, hatred burning in his eyes. "This changes nothing. The cartel knows about the research now. Others will come. Let them," Cale replied coldly. "The Alliance will be waiting." With the immediate threat neutralized, Cale turned his attention to Lyra's injury. "That needs medical attention." She dismissed his concern with a shake of her head. "It's superficial. Your team is still in danger." The dead man's switch was a bluff, came Lieutenant Dawson's voice as he entered the chamber with the rest of the team. "We neutralized the remaining cartel forces. Seems they weren't expecting such coordinated resistance." His gaze moved between Cale and Lyra with newfound respect. As Alliance security forces arrived to take Reed and the surviving cartel members into custody, Cale found a moment of relative privacy with Lyra near one of the chamber's grand windows. Outside, the unique twin moons of Xylos were rising, bathing the landscape in golden light. "That was impressive work, Envoy Taverin," he said formally, though his eyes conveyed more than his words. "Your tactical abilities are unexpected." Lyra smiled, wincing slightly as a medic applied a regenerative patch to her arm. "I told you I pursued additional qualifications. Alliance tactical training was just the beginning." "The beginning of what, exactly?" Cale asked, genuinely curious about the path that had led her from the eager girl he remembered to the capable woman before him. "Of becoming someone who could make a difference," she replied simply. "After our meeting 7 years ago, I realized that admiration wasn't enough. If I wanted to help protect what I valued, my people, our knowledge, the possibility of peaceful coexistence between species, I needed real skills." Cale nodded slowly. "It seems you acquired them." "I had a good inspiration," Lyra said, meeting his gaze directly. "Though I'll admit, my initial motivation wasn't entirely selfless." Before Cale could respond, they were interrupted by a communication from the Resolute. "Colonel, Lyran High Council is requesting an immediate briefing on the situation." "Acknowledged," Cale replied. "Prepare for our return shuttle." The next few days were consumed by debriefings, strategy sessions, and the complex diplomatic negotiations necessary to expand Alliance protection of Lyran space without offending their sovereignty. Throughout it all, Cale found himself consistently impressed by Lyra's capabilities. She navigated the political complexities with the same skill she had shown in combat, balancing Lyran cultural sensitivities with the practical requirements of interstellar security. On the third evening, following a particularly tense meeting with the Lyran Defense Committee, Cale encountered Lyra in one of the floating gardens that were a hallmark of Xylos' capital city. Elevated platforms supporting lush vegetation drifted gently through the air, guided by subtle anti-gravity technology. She stood at the edge of a garden platform, gazing out at the city's crystalline spires gleaming in the twilight. When she noticed his approach, she smiled in welcome. The committee finally approved the joint security protocols, she informed him. Your patience with their philosophical objections was unexpected. I've learned that different species have different approaches to warfare, Kale replied, joining her at the platform's edge. The Lyran reluctance to embrace military solutions has its wisdom. Yet you've dedicated your life to those military solutions, Lyra observed. Someone has to stand ready when diplomacy fails, he said. Then, with a slight smile, he added, though I'm beginning to see the value of having individuals who understand both approaches. Lyra turned to face him fully. Is that why you requested that I be assigned as the permanent liaison to Alliance forces in this sector? Kale raised an eyebrow. You've been well informed. I still have connections in the diplomatic corps, she replied with a hint of her old mischievousness. Was it a professional decision, or a personal one? The directness of the question was pure Lyra, reminding him of the girl who had once fearlessly declared her feelings. But now that boldness was tempered with maturity and self-assurance that made it impossible to dismiss. Both, Kale admitted after a moment. You've proven yourself exceptionally capable. The Alliance needs officers who understand Lyran culture and concerns. And I find that I value your perspective. Just my perspective? Lyra asked softly. Kale turned to look out at the city, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke again, his voice carried an unusual note of openness. 7 years ago, when you said you'd come back when you were older, I didn't truly believe it. In my experience, people make grand declarations in moments of emotion, then move on with their lives. Not everyone, Lyra said. No, he agreed. Not everyone. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, the pendant she had given him all those years ago. I kept this. At first, I told myself it was just a diplomatic courtesy. Then it became a reminder of something rare in the universe. Genuine sincerity, uncomplicated by politics or hidden agendas. Lyra's eyes widened at the sight of the pendant. You actually kept it all this time. It's traveled with me across 17 star systems, Kale confirmed. Something of a good luck charm, though I'd never admit that to my crew. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with the gentle rustling of the garden's exotic foliage and the distant harmonics of Lyran ambient music from the city below. The Resolute departs for the Arcturus system tomorrow, Kale said eventually. High Command wants us to investigate rumors of cartel activity there. I know, Lyra replied. If I accept the liaison position, I'd be expected to accompany Alliance forces on such missions. Kale turned to her, his usually guarded expression open and contemplative. It's dangerous work, more dangerous than diplomatic postings. The cartel won't forget the role you played in thwarting their plans here. I'm not afraid of danger, Lyra said. I never was. That's not why you told me to come back when I was older, was it? No, Kale admitted. It was because I needed you to find your own path, not one shaped by influence or infatuation. And because I needed to see you as you truly are, not as an extension of my own decisions or protections. Lyra stepped closer, her multi-chromatic eyes reflecting the city lights. And what do you see now, Colonel Vance? I see someone who kept a promise I never expected to be kept, he said quietly. Someone who built herself into a force to be reckoned with, not for my sake, but for her own. Someone I'd be proud to serve alongside. And perhaps, in time, something more. In time, Lyra echoed, a smile playing at her lips. Haven't we waited long enough? The Lyran directness that had once flustered him now drew a genuine laugh from Kale. Perhaps we have. When he leaned forward, she met him halfway. Their kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with the intensity of feelings long held in reserve. When they finally parted, Kale found himself experiencing something unfamiliar in his carefully controlled life, a sense of rightness, of completion. You know, Lyra said, her voice slightly breathless. In Lyran culture, keeping someone's navigator's blessing for 7 years is considered a declaration of intent. Is that so? Kale replied, his arms still around her. And what exactly am I declaring? That our paths are meant to be traveled together, she said simply. The following morning, as the Resolute prepared for departure, Colonel Kalen Vance stood on the bridge with his customary stern demeanor. Only those who knew him well might have noticed the subtle change in his bearing, a certain lightness that hadn't been there before. When Special Envoy Lyra Tavarin arrived on the bridge for her first official day as Alliance Lyran liaison, she was every inch the professional diplomat and tactical advisor. She greeted the bridge crew with formal courtesy, saving a particularly respectful nod for the colonel. "Welcome aboard, Envoy Tavarin," Kale said officially. "The Resolute is honored to have you join us." "The honor is mine, Colonel," she replied with equal formality, though her multichromatic eyes held a warmth visible only to him. Around her neck hung a navigator's blessing pendant, a match to the one he carried. As the mighty ship broke orbit from Xylos, Lyra stood beside Kale, both of them watching the beautiful blue-purple world recede on the view screen. They were not touching, maintaining the professional distance required by their positions. But between them was a connection forged through years of growth, challenge, and mutual respect, and the promise of a shared journey among the stars. "Course laid in for the Arcturus system, Colonel," the navigation officer reported. "Proceed," Kale ordered, and, as the ship's engines hummed with power, he glanced at Lyra. "Ready for what's next, Envoy?" Her smile contained all the determination and spirit that had first caught his attention 7 years ago, now refined by experience and confidence. "Always, Colonel. Always." The Resolute leaped into hyperspace, carrying them toward new challenges and opportunities, the first chapter of their shared story just beginning to unfold among the endless stars.